My name is Fionn Ferreira, and I love doing two things. One of those things is inventing, playing with science and building random things. That could be very random, but sometimes I also like to work on things where we can change our world. I like inventing things that can physically change the way that we see our world and ultimately lead to a cleaner future. So how did I get into this in the first place? Well, I'm Irish. I'm from Ireland. I'm currently 22 years old. And basically in Ireland, as a young person, what do you do? Well, on a sunny day, you go out kayaking. But on a day where the weather's not so good, I went and played with my Legos. That taught me two things. One, on days when the weather is bad, you have to look at ways that you can reinvent things to make those days not so bad. And on the days where weather is good, well, then you have to experience nature. And that's been at the heart of my journey throughout what I do. It's been loving nature and trying to preserve what we have today for more people who are there tomorrow. And that led me into the field of something that we couldn't see. Growing up by the seashore in Ireland, I saw plastics on the coastline in so many different places. But that plastic was not actually harming. The big ones are not the big problem. What I later then saw was that these big plastics are breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces, eventually becoming microplastics. And that's where I knew that I had to do something to fight the problem. And that's what started me on this journey of removing microplastics from water. For me, it was actually quite a difficult path moving forward. I knew we had a problem, and that problem was removing plastics from water. Nobody was doing it. But first of all, we had a bigger problem, and that was figuring out, well, why should we remove them from water, and how much is there? I lived in the middle of nowhere. Like literally, I mean, the last house on the electricity line, like, forget it. But I did have something, and that was parents who literally showed me that anything I wanted to have, I could have, as long as I made it myself. So as a result, I thought, well, first, let's try and measure how much plastic there is in the environment. So to do that, as one does, as a 15-year-old does, I built a device that could measure the plastics in water. It started off very simply. Think a microscope on steroids with a lot of cool gadgets attached, where we can identify individual plastics and then measure the amount of plastic we have in a solution of water. And then very quickly I realized we have so much plastic in the water around us and nobody's doing anything about it, that I realized it's time for me to act upon this. So I started off the usual way, thinking, well, these are small bits suspended in water. Surely filtration is the way to go, right? We can pass water through a filter, we can remove it from water, and then ultimately, hey presto, our water is clean. But I quickly realized it wasn't as simple as that. That's because microplastics are often smaller in width or even in size than a human hair, so incredibly small that if we would pass them through a filter, the filter would be clogged very quickly, and it would make it extremely difficult to remove plastics from water. So then I thought, well, what if we look at the chemistry of plastics? What if we turn this upside down? If chemistry and the outer layers of the plastic is what we could use to pick them up. Plastics are by nature what we call non-polar. So if we add something else non-polar, they'll stick together. Just like when you make a vinaigrette for a salad and you get the oil and the vinegar in separate layers. So that was the basis of my method. I started off just using oil and water, and it worked pretty well. But then I needed to control this oil and water. Making oil spills around the world is not something we want. But what if we could magnetize that oil spill to control it to pick up plastics using magnets? And that was the conception of my idea. Well, what we then need to do is apply technologies like this technology. And that meant that for me, cleaning up the oceans with magnets was something that I had to try and engineer. So I had this method that worked on a small beaker-sized scale. And then I had to try and scale it. I think that's something that a lot of people at, for instance, this Congress here face as a challenge. Scaling from that idea phase into something that is a reality. And that was really challenging for me too. But through funding from people like Robert Downey Jr., his Footprint Coalition, and working at events such as the World Economic Forum and many others, it gave me a lot of experience and connections. Through that, I was able to scale my technology into something that does remove plastics from water at scale in flow. Think of a device that we can build into a ship that takes in water and puts out cleaner water. And that's something that I'm now scaling and using on quite a large scale. At the moment, there's almost as much plastic in the ocean as there are fish by weight. Every single day, Many millions of tons of plastics are entering our oceans, and each year they estimate that around 8 billion tons of plastics are entering our oceans. This is also even more worrying because plastic pollution is still on the rise. Every single year we are making more and more plastic, and this is set to skyrocket by the year 2050. Plastic pollution itself is not just a problem. It's different ingredients such as plasticizers, heavy metals, colorants, and chemicals that make plastic such a scary thing to put into our bodies. What's even more scary is that we consume over 5 grams of plastic every single week. That's like 1 credit card's worth of plastic going into our bodies. I think young scientists actually find their journey pretty difficult. Mainly because people don't take us seriously. Like, look at us, right? We're young, we're scientists, we've got cool ideas, but we might not have the track record or the experience to back ourselves up. So I think the biggest help that other people can do to young scientists is just to take us seriously. Remember, every idea has the power to change our world. And if we don't give ideas legs to walk and actually turn into something powerful, well then we will lose ideas. So congresses just like this one are required so that ideas turn into reality a lot sooner, and through support from many other people. For young scientists, I have 5 pieces of advice. And these pieces of advice are: 1, stay specific. The more narrower your field is, the more you can focus on exactly what you like in an area, the more you can make a difference. 2, read as much information about this topic as you can. Find it anywhere. Don't think that something is too difficult to understand or too scientific paper. Remember, part 1 comes into play here. If you're focused, you can become an expert in your field extremely quickly. And then 3, well, this is the slightly more difficult bit, and that's just to go out and play. Just like Legos, right? Think of Lego blocks, trying out things that are completely unconventional, something you never thought of before. And this process could take a week, it could take a year, it could take 10 years. You can't really say. But the more you play, probably the more likely you'll come up with something. And 4 then is telling others about it. Doing this alone is an awful task. So changing the world is something that you have to do together. It's also way more fun. So find friends who like the same thing as you, or friends who can do things that you're really bad at. For me, I'm really terrible at telling my story and doing social media about it. So that's why I've got some friends who help me. And then 5, last thing, and this thing a lot of people think is number 1, but I really don't think so, is finding funding. People think that it's very expensive to innovate. Innovation is actually free, it's all up here. The materials to help you innovate are the expensive bit. So first think about what you want to do, play with the materials you have. That will mean that you'll have to work in a completely new, unconventional way that other people have not. And then using that way, once you have established a method, only then can you scale up. And by that time, you'll already be an industry expert and you'll have the funds available. My dream and my hope is that more youth aspire to invent. Youth, just like me, have the power to make a difference, but not enough of us do. So as a result, I want more youth to be in the area of STEM, invention, and science. Remember, 25% of the global's population are youth, but they're 100% of our future.